second. Just try again. It's not on.
And we're not rubbish, are we?
No, I don't know. I don't know why I shouldn't.
Should change the direction
Right, it says, try now.
Yeah. I received an apology from my tenant. I sent the message he had to go to hospital this morning for an eye test. He might turn up to the meeting, I'm not sure. But
We'll have to shower tomorrow.
Councillor after he had to soak her. Yeah. Thank you. Nice.
Right.
And Donna, you are actually now down on committee, aren't you?
Yeah.
Right. So I can just remind people to put phones on silent or vibrate. Minutes of previous meeting, can we pass them as a true record? No. Item 3, interests and lobbying. Councillor Sokol.
None here.
Councillor Akhtar.
None.
Councillor Pinnett.
None, Chair.
Councillor Fair.
Nothing to report.
Councillor Bellamy.
2019 9 and 8, I've been lobbied by objectors, and I also met with the applicant, but well before May last year.
Cool.
So I know just procedural advice given.
Yeah, and I have none for a change. Right, item 4, admission of the public. We have been put on webcast when it's working. No shouting, swearing, clapping, stamping your feet. Item 5, any public questions?
None.
No. Any deputations or petitions?
None received, Chair.
We did site visits this morning at Wheelwright Centre, Dewsbury, Denby Dale, that will Cumberland Lane, Woodhead Road, Onley, Marsden Lane in Marsden. Quite a little run round we had this morning. Item 11, appeals. We've got one. David.
Thank you, Chair. As you say, just want to report today. This was an application at Elmley Fields, at Liley Lane at Grangemore, refused by Strategic Committee on the 14th of May 2019. The main issues at the appeal were whether the proposal was an inappropriate development in the Green Belt, the effect on character and appearance of the area. The inspector concluded that the site is a grassed field, undulating topography in the rural location within the Green Belt. Development consisted of the importation of 90,000 tonnes of topsoil to reprofile and restore the land to agricultural use. The inspector found that given the filling operations were for a 2-year period only, the openness of the Green Belt would be preserved and didn't conflict with the provisions of the framework. On the issue of character, the inspector concluded that the final landform would reflect the surrounding landscape and it would not harm character and appearance. The appeal was allowed subject to conditions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, David. Andrew.
Can I just ask, Chair, that the application was to import 90,000 tonnes of topsoil and subsoil. Do we know, because I can't remember how long that was going to take and how far away do they have to go to get all this? Can we remember that?
Yeah, through you then, Chair. The period for filling the void was going to take 2 years. In terms of where the material came from, I would have to come back to you at a later date to give you a precise answer.
I'm just thinking of the issue of carting soil long distances with all the attendant climate issues related to that. That's my reason for asking. Thank you.
Thank you.
If I remember, I think it were eight vehicles in and 8 out during the course of the day. Right, item 12, page 39. This is Riverside Works at Onley. We've been there quite a few times.
Thank you, Chair. This application seeks outline permission with all matters reserved bar access for residential development. The site is due east of Honley and formerly hosted Rogers Plant Hire, a plant hire business which has relocated further east to the site and can be seen on plan now, while under construction in this photo it is now being completed. The current image shows the site in 2017 while it was previously occupied. This and the following image show the currently vacant state of the site. The former building within the site has been demolished. This application is a resubmission of a scheme originally approved in 2014. The 2014 application was approved with a condition requiring the development to provide a riverside walk adjacent to the river home at the request of local ward councillors. This application was submitted in 2017 prior to the 2014 application's grant of permission expiring. The applicant disputed the reasonableness of the footpath condition during this application due to the significant constraints of the site. These included the steep topography and the envisioned engineering operations required to facilitate the works, that it does not connect to another path at this time, being covered in protected trees, a registered habitat network, and descending into a flood zone. These concerns from the applicant led to the discussions between officers and the applicant. A solution was reached that a bond would be paid by the applicant to be held by the council and used to pay for the implementation of the riverside walks by the council should a larger scheme for improvements along the river home be undertaken. This would have been time limited and returned to the developer after a certain period if not used. After this solution was agreed, the application was presented to the Huddersfield Planning Committee in November 2017, where members resolved to support the proposal, subject to delegation back to officers to calculate the bond and secure it via a Section 106 agreement. Both the council and the applicant have attempted but been unable to calculate a realistic or reasonable value for the bond because of the constraints. This resulted in the applicant suggesting that the previously imposed condition for the riverside walk be reimposed to progress the application. However, now knowing what we know over the difficulties of implementing the path, officers do not consider the riverside walk path to be reasonable. Therefore, it is not considered to pass the 6 tests for conditions as outlined in national guidance. And officers are now recommending that the application be approved without the condition. Looking beyond the riverside walk, members have a full detailed report in front of them detailing officers' assessment of the proposal. Since the previous application from 2014 and the committee in 2017 where this application was last presented, the local plan has superseded the unitary development plan. Nonetheless, officers remain supportive of the proposal. Notably, the site is changed from unallocated land in the UDP to a priority employment area in the local plan, therefore now representing a departure. However, for the reasons detailed in the report, which includes a development enabling Rogers Plant Hire to move to a larger nearby site with a purpose-built facility, and that no harm would be caused to the neighbouring business elsewhere within the priority employment area, officers consider the principle to be acceptable. Access is the sole consideration applied for. Both officers and Highways Development Management are satisfied with the details provided. Other material considerations, including design, amenity and ecology, have been considered. Based on the details held at this time, with these applications submitted at outline, officers consider no prohibitive reasons why satisfactory details cannot be provided at reserved matters stage. This is subject to the conditions detailed within the report. No public representations have been received in response to the application, and officers now recommend approval. Nothing further, Chair.
We have one speaker, Chair, Sir Andy Keeling, who's the agent.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members. Like I say, Andy Keeling, a planning consultant working for Rogers Plant Hire. The officer report in front of you is completely full. You know, all the planning policies and issues are all dealt with. I just thought take the 3 minutes, if you like, to update you on where the business is and where it's moved from and to. You've already seen where they've actually moved to, and probably the local councillors know that as well. The applicant did promise the Huddersfield Committee that he would attempt to stay local, and at that time, and he's upheld that promise and moved his business and kept the employment within this particular community. To do that, he's actually taken out, on call it loans, but he's serviced the move with money based on the back of selling this site off, if you like, and at the moment he's holding that money and having to pay various fees on it. So it's far too complicated for me to explain financially, but you understand the principle. As soon as he pays that off, he's released from that debt in one way or the other. So just to say, really, members, that he kept up his side of the promise. In terms of the planning application, as far as we're concerned, it's all the same principles. He has moved, but he still needs to sell the site to service that debt. So, without going any further than I have, Chair, I'll leave you to discuss the application.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I was reading through this report by officers, I remember this application by outline application by approval in 2017, but only was delayed because there was a condition, footpath condition, But since that, we have a local plan. According to the local plan, this is actually a priority employment area now, I'm not against the application, but I'm just thinking how we can justify, overtaking the priority area, departure from priority area to residential property, So can the officer explain to me,
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, it is now allocated as a priority employment area. One thing to note, though, is the applicant has now moved to unallocated land within 500 metres of the site, which represents, in our opinion, windfall employment allocation. So the removal of this site has enabled a better, more appropriate facility for the applicant within the locality, securing the jobs within the locality. So on balance, yes, we would be losing some employment land, but through this application we are gaining more, better facilities for the applicant. The other side to that is making sure that the proposal doesn't impact on the development, the existing occupiers within the larger priority employment area. However, given the separation distances of this site and the intervening land, while also within the priority employment area, we're satisfied that there wouldn't be harm to their business operations.
Chair, I remember, I think it was last year, there was a similar application and on Municipal Britannia Road. That time we were struggling to approve the application from priority employment area to residential, and the officer was against that time, but it was a member who approved this application. But I can't see the two different area come from officers,
Through you, Chair, just to answer that, Councillor. The differences are that on Britannia Road, that was a conversion. That was a conversion of an existing building, and the planning committee considered that the conversion and the building was worth retaining. So the officer's recommendation was balanced, and it was balanced and weighted because of that, whereas opposed to this one, where there isn't a conversion and a building to retain. So no two sites are the same, and the material considerations were different, but there were two fundamental differences: a conversion and a new build. Thank you.
Andrew.
Thank you, Chair. I have the feeling that this is a bit of a win-win situation because although the site is designated for employment purposes, we have heard that the person who occupied that site has now moved somewhere else to a piece of land that wasn't allocated for that, but was white land, I assume, unallocated. And we've now got potentially a windfall housing site. I think we ought to be quite pleased about that. Not that it's going to stop the development of some greenfield sites elsewhere, but I won't go that far. That's just being capricious. But I think this is excellent. I am really not sure about this walkway, which having looked at the bank on which it was proposed to be put, I can quite understand why practically everybody seems to have been reluctant about it. The engineering required to do it, and particularly since it doesn't appear to join up with anything else, it seems a bit over the top. This is with all due respect to the ward councillors who put forward the idea, but I just don't think it's going to work. So I would like to move the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Yes, I will support this. It's as Andrew says, there's no tie-ups anywhere. The people who were there have moved up nearly up the other road at Brockholes, and so there's not a problem. The problem I have, I would have had if it had been put forward, was the Riverside Walkway, which I reckon if it had been come to fruition, it would probably be the most expensive Riverside Walkway that is in Yorkshire. It just beyond belief that anybody could even think about doing a walkway there. And I have to say, it would be rather nice if some of these people that represent that area even bothered to come to a meeting and give the say-so. Nobody ever turns up from there, so yeah, I will support it. Always support it. Less the walkway, of course.
Totally agree with you there, Donald. No way would I walk down there at all, even though there's no way to get to it and there's no end to it either. Right, it's been moved by Councillor Pinnock, seconded by Councillor Firth. Those in favour, please show. Thank you.
Unanimous, Chair.
Next, page 57. This is Denbydale, Cumberworth Lane. Chris.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, members. This is for the full plan application which has been made by Walker Builders Limited and is for the erection of a first floor extension and alterations to an existing industrial building at 230 Cumberworth Lane, Denbydale, which has been vacant since around 2011. As shown in the slide, the site was previously occupied by a company who manufactured cast concrete products and which also had builders merchants elements to their activities. As such, it can be considered that employment-related activities are already acceptable. As shown in this slide, the site is within a greenbelt setting and is visible from Cumberworth Lane and is very much interpreted as an industrial building and associated yard area within a rural setting. Its northern and western boundaries consist of woodland areas with protected trees which also form part of the wildlife habitat network, and the site is not within a conservation area or contains any listed buildings. The site is accessed from Cumberworth Lane as shown in this image. And as shown in this image, the site's eastern boundary consists of a stone boundary wall, which is in need of repair, whilst the southern boundary consists of rural fencing. As shown in the image, the site occupies a prominent position on Cumberworth Lane from the south. However, from the north, the view of the site is not quite as prominent. These images show views from the nearby residential area at Bromley Park, which is to the rear of the site, and which shows that the site is restricted from a change in topography and intervening woodland vegetation. The proposal consists of an adaptation and first floor extension of the front ancillary element of the building adjacent to Cumberworth Lane and would be used as offices and meeting space. There would be an overall increase in building volume of 6%, and the main building element would be to the rear, would be refurbished and reclad. It would continue to be used as a warehouse. The site would provide the necessary employment space for the rationalisation of a number of business premises which the local builders use in the local area, and the applicant claims that the site will facilitate the business expansion plans for the site to eventually consist of 75 staff. As outlined in section 10 of the committee report, officers are of the opinion that the proposed development accords with the Greenbelt policy, as it can be considered as an exception under NPPF paragraph 145 criterion C and accords with the provisions of local plan policy LP 57. It is considered that the first floor extension would not result in a disproportionate addition to the existing building and would enhance the character and appearance of the building within the Greenbelt setting. Furthermore, officers consider the proposals to promote sustainable development, as it would mean the reuse of an existing industrial building with reasonably good access to public transport and other facilities. As such, it is considered that the principle of design of the proposal can be supported. The site is near to residential dwelling houses. However, officers are of the opinion that the proposal will not have an adverse impact on residential amenity. Also, consideration should be given to the fact that the site can lawfully be used already for industrial uses. As shown in the plan, some of the hard landscaping to the front of the building would be replaced with soft landscaping. There would be the creation of a landscape car park, area of 20 spaces and a refuse area. The existing site access would be adapted with the rebuilding of footways and the rebuilding of the stone wall to achieve necessary visibility displays, and subject to conditions securing the necessary footway and turning facilities, electrical vehicle charging points and cycle spaces being provided, officers have no objections. At the request of officers, the applicant has submitted a landscape scheme showing additional trees and native planting to the front and to the side of the building, which would help enhance the setting of the building and the green belt. The applicant is also willing to accept a suitably worded condition securing additional landscaping to the rear of the site. The tree and biodiversity officers have raised no objections subject to conditions protecting existing overhanging trees and increasing the biodiversity value of the site. The proposed development is on land that has been identified as being potentially contaminated and within a development of high risk regarding coal mining features. However, given the nature of the proposals, consult these sections subject to conditions. Finally,
But the building proposed is not much different from the building already we have there. Actually, it improve it. It's more improved in landscape and other, and is in line with the other residential bungalows around there. But, Chair, I'm just wondering, looking in through there, in a short period, 20 years, we have approved at least 14 applications, and none of them have been implemented yet. I'm wondering, is that the same applicant or the new applicant, or will this applicant will be prepared to implement the recommended permission we have been granted today?
I think good thing is what you saw was there's works going on around periphery at place now, because I did exactly the same thing as you. I counted them up as well, and it's 14. I think record I've seen is 17 applications and now happening. So, yes. Any more? Andrew?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I think this is a very good application, and it's something. It emphasises the point that we have to be very careful with rural businesses, particularly those that are at least to some extent rooted in the local community, and it's important that we do on occasions make exceptions. All right, in this case, the site has been used previously for business use, so there is a precedent in a sense where maybe it wouldn't be acceptable in the Greenbelt. But I think in this case, with the conditions that we've applied, that things will be okay. It does just occur to me, however, that whether it's worth ensuring that the site doesn't get overused, and I don't know quite how one can control against that, because if the business becomes so successful that the traffic generation of the site becomes excessive, I don't know whose definition that is, but otherwise, I think it's very good. I just wonder whether there's anything we can do to safeguard a future overuse of the site if it ever happens.
I think one of the attractive things about the site to potential purchasers is it has a history of unrestricted use on it, and you have to, as a planning authority, have regard to that fallback scenario. I think what the speaker communicated and what's also in the report is there is an element of control around the hours of operation, but that's the balance between what they can currently do unrestricted versus what this prospective purchaser is prepared to limit themselves to. And then it comes back to where you were starting from, was, is it ever going to happen? So you've got to you're trading those dynamics together. So it's about what's fair and reasonable. I think the balance that you've got is probably the fairest, to hope that a local business does move into it and make a success of it. Yeah.
Well, on reading through all the relevant information, they seem to have ticked all the boxes, actually. And I've never known any problems down Cumberworth Lane from these people. So I think it's a good idea. It is a brownfield site within Greenbelt, and there's been no objections as far as I can see over the years. Ticks all the boxes. Excellent idea. It gets my support. Thank you.
So I think if there were a bad neighbour, we'd have known about it today. I think it's a move in the right direction for them, and big improvement, I'd say. Have we got somebody who will move it and somebody who will... Right. Moved by Councillor Pinnock, seconded by Councillor Firth. Those in favour, please show.
Unanimous, Chair.
Page 73 next. When I find it. This is our last site visit, I believe. Marsden Lane. Neil.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Neil Bearcroft. I've acted as case officer on this application. The application site is outlined in red on the aerial photograph in front of you at the moment. The application seeks the use of land for the provision of camping facilities, for the formation of spaces for 5 camper vans, the erection of 4 camping pods, and the site is located between Huddersfield Narrow Canal, which is in the northwest that we saw out on site, and the River Colne, which is at the bottom, that runs along the bottom of the site. Like I say, it's predominantly wooded, but there is an access track that runs through the site to a Canal and Rivers Trust depot at the northern end outside the site, and there's also an area of hard standing towards the north of the site where the camper vans and some parking would be provided. The site is located within the Greenbelt. And like I said, we saw the point of access this morning, which is on the corner there. Here are some photographs of the site. That's a map there. These are the photographs, so that's similar to where we parked the bus this morning, looking down towards the access. That's the point of access. It would be widened to allow vehicles to pass at the starting point of the access. This is looking back, canal on the right there. This is looking down the track a little further, the canal on the left with a towpath, which is open to the public to walk along. This is the area of hard standing, which would be partly used for the camper vans to be sited, and also some car parking. And this is just a general picture of what the site looks like. So naturally seeded trees across the site, and there's a few paths in it. It's fairly open at the moment. So the scheme that they're proposing is in front of you there. So as I suggested, they'll be widening the access at the front, providing some parking places along the track, but also 3 passing places to allow vehicles to pull in, to allow two-way movements. In total, 12 parking spaces would be provided. These are the camper van spaces, and there'd also be a toilet block which would be connected to the mains sewer. It should also be noted that the site has got a current planning permission for use as a bushcraft use on the site that was granted by Strategic Committee in May 2018. And this is a picture of the pods that they're proposing. So there's 2 sizes, one family pod, which is the larger one, and then a smaller pod, and also that's a picture of the toilet box. So timber structures with a dome type roof. Members have a fuller detailed report in front of them, and I would draw their attention to the update, which sets out additional representations which have been received, along with additional highway comments, a site management plan, some amendments to that, and also some extra information about drainage. In total, 52 objections have been received and 1 comment in support has been received. In terms of the key issues, the site is located within the green belt, and the proposed change of use of land and the erection of the camping pods would form inappropriate development. As set out in the NPPF, inappropriate development should not be approved except in very special circumstances. The applicant has put some matters forward to consider, which is set out in paragraph 10.7 of the report. In summary, these would be: the proposal would support the use of the existing bushcraft permission, the buildings are small in scale, camper vans would be restricted in size on an area that's already covered in hard landscaping, and the proposal would also fill a gap in the local leisure market by the provision of the camping facility. These points have been considered by officers. However, the bushcraft use was restricted to 15 people at any one time. It was restricted to only operate between the hours of 7 a.m. and 9 p.m. And included very limited construction works. It was improvements to the access and the provision of the passing places. And it is considered that the proposal would represent more significant works and more significant activity in the site. Officers therefore feel that very special circumstances have not been demonstrated, and the proposal wouldn't accord with Chapter 13 of the NPPF. The site is also, turning to other matters, the site is also relatively open with limited direct natural surveillance, and there would be no direct on-site surveillance other than the people using the facility. It is therefore considered the site is vulnerable to antisocial behaviour, and crime prevention measures such as lighting of the pods or communal areas or boundary treatments could potentially have an adverse impact on ecology, and no further detail to set out how these issues would be addressed has been provided. Therefore, there are concerns in relation to the design of the scheme, which has led to officers concluding it wouldn't accord a policy LP 24 of the local plan. With regards to residential amenity, there are some residential properties to the north. It's to the northwest. This map's orientated slightly differently. That would be in fairly close proximity to the camping uses. And there's concern that it would lead to intensification of use at the site, and the management plan that's been provided hasn't given sufficient comfort to officers and environmental health to feel that it would provide adequate management of the site. So that forms a third reason for refusal as well. With regard to highway safety, it's considered the access arrangements for the improved track and the passing places will be sufficient for the scale of the development proposed. With regards to ecology, as the scheme has been reduced down from initially proposed, that impact is considered to be acceptable. The application has also been assessed by the Canal and Rivers Trust, who raised no objection, subject to some conditions, and the Environment Agency, because there's small sections in the flood zone, but they now raise no objections as well. The application is therefore recommend refusal on greenbelt design and residential amenity grounds. Thank you, Chair.
We have 5 speakers for this one. We have John Farmer, who objects.
Thank you, Chair. 3 of us speaking today are doing so on behalf of a large group of residents of Marsden Lane who object to the campsite proposal, and a number of them are present here. Our wish is that this area of natural woodland remains largely unchanged. We are therefore very pleased to see that the officer's report highlights the threat that this development poses to the Greenbelt. In particular, the report finds no special reasons that would justify putting buildings onto this Greenbelt land. I would like to emphasise the scale of the building that is proposed. The latest plan shows 5 pods, not 4 as mentioned in the report, because there's an upturned boat pod on the site as well, and the toilet block. The 3 smallest pods are 10 feet high and 12 feet long. The family pod is 11 feet high and 20 feet long, and the toilet block is not much smaller at 9 feet high and 16 feet long. The plans provided by the applicant show the pods unobtrusively nestling in abundant vegetation. In reality, 6 substantial single-storey buildings between 9 and 11 feet high will be ranged alongside the track in an area where, as the plan shows, all the existing trees will have been removed. Working from the plan of the site provided by the applicant, we calculate that the space occupied by the camping and parking areas make up over 1/3 of the total area of the site. This must represent a substantial impact on the Greenbelt. By concentrating all of the tree felling, ground clearance and building next to the access track, this impact on the Greenbelt will look and feel even greater to local residents and the many visitors attracted to the canal-side spot. The site is an important area of woodland forming part of a significant wildlife corridor. The authority's ecology officer was initially concerned about the impact of this campsite, but is now of the opinion that the campsite will offer sufficient ecological protection. We have to say that this is hard to accept. Further, no account seems to have been taken of the impact to be made by the actual construction work on the site, when noise and other disturbance will be at a maximum. The previous planning permission for bushcraft activities on the site posed no threat to the character of the Greenbelt, but this proposal not only threatens that integrity, but restricts the area available to those bushcraft activities. I've just mentioned that previous planning approval. This approval also included several conditions to protect the amenity and safety of local residents, and our other 2 speakers will address them. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Peter Partridge.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for this opportunity. I'm going to focus on the proposed campsite management plan, in particular the amenity impact on the neighbourhood and site security. There are now some more campsite rules for the guidance of residents, but the concern of local people remains what happens when people don't follow the rules. And this is when a robust management plan is required, which at the moment we don't have. There are concerns about light pollution. There are clearly going to be external lighting the campsite for security and safety purposes. So what has been a quiet, dark space will be lost to us, as well as to the wildlife in the area. With noise nuisance is a big concern. Local residents are worried about levels of noise arising from people and cars coming and going during the day and night, social groups and ordinary holiday-making activities, which often involve making some noise, certainly in my experience, and particularly now as these buildings are now much closer to the neighbouring houses. The camp regulations now prohibit music and campfires, but the question is, how will non-compliance with the rules be dealt with in a timely way? There'll be a phone number to call, but no warden on the site to monitor any difficulties as they arise, or to have regard to the safety of well-being of the camp residents. And the council report details that, and also points out that the absence of a robust noise management plan, which we desperately need. On the question of site security, you'll see the police report comments on the open and accessible nature of the site, which is considered to be vulnerable to crime. It's particularly true when the site is empty and unoccupied, and no specific crime prevention measures have been put forward to deter crime, vandalism and antisocial behaviour. Cycle use is encouraged. There are, I believe, no details of any secure cycle storage on the site. And the council report, as you'll see, confirms that there are concerns about site security. Finally, public nuisance. Local residents, we do have concerns about potential public nuisance and antisocial behaviour arising from the lack of site security and supervision. It's open, easily accessible, and in close proximity to the pubs and amenities in Marsden. The Marsden area is a quiet residential neighbourhood. We have had recent incidents of antisocial behaviour and criminal damage, which have heightened concerns about public nuisance. So those are the concerns that I would like to bring home to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Liz Ballinger.
Chair. I'm here to present one more issue of significant concern for residents, and that is the increased threat to the safety of pedestrians in the area, and our feeling that this threat hasn't been taken into full account in Highways report and council considerations. The track to the site joins the highway at a tight bend at the junction of Warehouse Hill and Marsden Lane, already regarded as a danger spot by local drivers and pedestrians. A number of factors contribute to this. One is the narrowness of the road at this point, which does not permit two-way traffic. Drivers need to take great care approaching from either direction. Residents have experienced the consequences of drivers using undue speed, seemingly unaware of the need for caution, and the problems added by irresponsible parking in the vicinity linked to the lack of parking opportunities. Moreover, the road here, and this is a key concern for residents, and myself, the road here, while narrow, is part of an important day-to-day route for pedestrians into the village, including young children, push chairs, wheelchair users, in order to access its shops and facilities. There's a steady footfall throughout the day, swollen in the morning and mid-afternoon by school runs for under 11s and their parents. At weekends, visitors using the towpath access and leave the village via this route. Councillors who visited the site today will have seen how difficult it is for pedestrians walking to and from the village to negotiate this junction. People on foot are forced into close proximity with vehicles by the narrowness of the carriageway, and there's only a hopelessly narrow pavement on one side of Warehouse Hill. To reiterate, this bend, already so unfriendly for pedestrians, is the exact point where the access track joins the public road. If the campsite opens, there will be a new flow of traffic onto and away from the track, interacting with existing traffic on Warehouse Hill, raising the danger to car drivers, but especially to pedestrians. No amount of tinkering with the track or its access point will stop this, and that is a huge concern. In sum, on the basis of highway safety, but particularly pedestrian safety, we have abiding concerns that this development will add to the threat to pedestrians, and it is not warranted as a source of economic development. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you. We now have the applicants, and I think we have Sophie Byram to start.
Good afternoon, members. My name is Sophie Byram and I'm here today to speak in support of the application for the proposed campsite. The land in question is owned by my family, so you would be right in thinking that I do have an interest in this today. And you may believe that You may believe that my only motivation for being here today, but I can wholeheartedly say that my predominant reason for wanting to speak is to bring some well-needed tourism and investment into the village of Marsden. As a family, we are very involved in the local business community, and the overall feeling is that the business for local shops is very slow. While the story you may hear for those who don't live within the village is that the village is always so busy and full of ale trailers, this is simply not the case. Lots of small businesses are struggling from day to day, and the common theme when talking to business owners is that there's simply not enough footfall within the village to sustain the local amenities. In recent months, many of the smaller shops and bars have simply had to close as they could not sustain and make a living. While there's lots of willing and fantastic community causes trying to make a difference, this alone is not enough to bring a well-needed lift to the village. I'm sure local ward councillors would agree with this. As you've heard from the planning officer, the reason for not giving the go-ahead to this scheme is predominantly due to land being classified as greenbelt. Members, you visited this site this morning, and I can tell you this land has predominantly been used for fly tipping and for locals to walk their dogs. We feel this land could be put to much better use to benefit the local community and also to entice some much-needed tourism. Marsden as a village has so much potential to offer tourists, and there's very little accommodation and no campsite within the village centre. While we accept this is greenbelt land, campsites are commonly sited within the greenbelt. In fact, I have a list in front of me here of 35 campsites within the West Yorkshire area, and I think there's just 5 of them that are not within the greenbelt. We feel this is a suitable use for the land and can harmonise with the local community and the surrounding environment. As you can see within the plans, we've proposed a community allotment garden, which we feel would be a great addition to the community. We hope you can support this and give the village a much needed boost it deserves. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Stephen Byram.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for letting me address you today. I'm Steve Byram. I'm the applicant, along with my daughter, 2 daughters actually. Hannah can't be here. She's working in France at the moment on a similar type of scheme as what this will be. The scheme we're presenting is for camping and glamping, and we actually do feel it can have massive benefits to the village. 5 generations of my family have actually lived in the village, and I've got a keen interest in the area. As a business person, a resident, we've got property in the village, we know how businesses feel in the village, we're in tune with actually what happens in Marsden. I've seen firsthand the shops struggle in recent years, and people might say that's got nothing to do with this, but I'm involved with business communities in the village, and I'm getting constant feedback. We need more of tourists, we need more things. So when this piece of land came available, we looked at it carefully. We considered it as a family, and we actually felt it was there's potential benefits for it. And it isn't going to be hugely profitable. It's not about profit. It might seem strange that to people. We've got other businesses that we do make considerable amount of money from, and I'm not holding any. I'm not ashamed of that. I'm pleased with that. We think this can benefit the community, but it will involve a significant investment. And our proposal is for 5 pods that actually sit within old allotments, and that's not been addressed before, alongside the canal. It was an old slurry for the canal dredge in this site. That's why the trees have just shot up as willy-nilly. There's potential for actually keeping most of them and fitting these in a sensitive way, fitting the development in a sensitive way. The tracks used by the Canal and River Trust, there's no limits over that whatsoever, so there's no control over that track whatsoever as far as use. It's on a site which is easily accessed from the canal by both foot and by bike, and the village centre is really close. It's a previously neglected piece of land that's constantly been tipped on. Dog walkers use it, and it's been used. You'll have seen that yourself. There's rubbish on there. We've spent quite a bit of time cleaning it and picking rubbish up on there, and it's a constant thing that happens. It's got invasive Himalayan balsam on the site. That'd go. We think it's a low-key, environmentally sensitive boost to the village, which has been reduced in numbers after speaking to planning officers and different consultants within this process. As Sophie pointed out, we've done our own work on this site, and most campsites are actually sat within the green belt by the very nature of what they are. We understand the residents' concerns. We do take that into consideration. It might not seem that, but we do take that into consideration quite heavily. Okay. Is that it? Okay, that's fine. Okay.
Mohan.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. Chair, I accept the proposal bill attracts the tourism which the village badly needed it, and there will be a benefit to the local community and local business. At the moment, there's a lot of shops closing down in the village. There's no business left. But at the same time, I think the proposal is a bit far too large it's on big scale. If the proposal come down to the small scale and bit better facility like the toilet they propose is not linking with anywhere on the drainage, I think, yeah. And the other thing, and the noise, we haven't sorted on noise, and the people objectors have said about the lighting system, there's nothing in there. So I'm not sure what my colleagues might be thinking about that. If we defer this application and ask the officer to get a better deal, negotiate with the applicant, get a better deal, acceptable to the local residents, that's the way forward, I think. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, I actually live in Marsden, so I know this site really, really well. I agree. To be honest, it would be fantastic for tourism, and I think Marsden's Village does need something. It definitely needs accommodation providers of some sort, because there is a big shortage. If I was just looking at that, I'd be fine with it. I do have a few concerns though with this. One of them is security, and the other one is the fact that there's nobody going to be on, or what we think, nobody on site all the time. I think what I would like is maybe, agree with Mohan here, maybe for more discussion with officers to take place, something like that, about looking at how it could be managed and getting a better deal. Like I said, in principle, I've nothing against at all there being some form of campsite tourism in that area, but I've got some concerns about that. I think somebody needs to be on that site, and it needs probably a better management plan. So I'd actually propose deferral and further discussions with officers.
Go on,
Thank you, Chair. Well, I'm going to see the site this morning. I think that there are two things it has going against it. One, of course, is it's very, very near to residential properties. I do caravanning in the summer, and I've got to say, all the sites I've ever been on, I've had a warden's hut near the site, and it's been watched 24/7. Residential properties not within probably half a mile to a mile away. They don't want to be sat on top of a site like that. And of course, another thing it has against it is it's not going to be controlled. There's going to be nobody there to look after it. And they need somebody. You need somebody there at least 24/7. They need to live on site. And also, as I say, it is very, very near residential properties, and I can understand why people are complaining, because there will be excessive noise. I'm not too bothered about it being in Greenbelt, because most of these caravan sites and camping sites are in Greenbelt, and they work very, very well. But they're looked after 24/7, and they're not sat on top of residential properties. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I agree with most of what's been said. I take the point about the need to provide tourist facilities. Well, actually, in large parts of Kirklees, not just in Marsden, but this is the one we're dealing with at the moment. But I am not convinced that what we've got here is actually the right vehicle. I do wonder whether we ought to defer it and ask the applicants to talk to officers, also potentially to talk to the local residents to see if they can find some sort of accommodation. Because I am worried about the lack of surveillance on this site. The only surveillance would be the local residents, and they I'm sure don't want that job particularly. I will propose that we defer it for discussions with. Oh, sorry, I do apologise. I obviously didn't pick that up. Something wrong with my hearing aid. I will second that in that case, because it does seem to me that rather than just refuse it, we ought to see if there's something of benefit that can be got out of this application.
You can.
Can I just clarify, there's been a proposal to defer by Councillor Bellamy to look at a management plan aspect of this. Councillor Sokol mentioned when you were talking about the application the scale of it, and also you mentioned better facilities and referred to toilet connections, sewerage connections. Does that reflect the debate?
Yeah, and this is a two-pendant. It's clarity, really, just to be really clear. The applicants are here, representatives of the community are here. So we just want to be very clear that we are acknowledging the Greenbelt location, recognising the use within that, not necessarily thinking it is inappropriate, but finding that the day-to-day operational stuff, the management of the site, the potential for antisocial behaviour and for crime issues. So that might require a building if you're talking about resident an on-site presence or a nearby presence for management. So we will take that away and discuss it with the applicant. You've also asked that the applicant engage with the local people themselves.
That's one of the things.
It may not generate anything, but you've asked the applicant to do that and to come back and tell you how they've done that themselves.
Most of these sites I've been are all in the Greenbelt, but there's always a warden or somebody looking after the site 24/7, and it's at least within a mile or even a couple of miles of residential places. So that's the two main things, my two main criteria.
Okay. We obviously can't change the site or the existing neighbours. That exists. The question you've asked is there anything above and beyond what the current application consists of in terms of the management plan, the number of pods, the number of camping, van, site, plots, whatever you call it, pitches, I think that's the expression. We will take that away, we will discuss that with them, and we'll come back to a future committee. We may have to reconsult if plans change, and then we'll come back. But I think if that clarifies what you want to see, the applicant's here, the residents are here, so that's what will then happen between now and a future committee. Is that okay? That's a separate thing. You've asked the applicant to engage with the residents. If the plans change and they're materially different, we will reconsult as we would on any revised planning application.
Right, I think that covers it. That everything what I was concerned about. That's been moved by Councillor Bellamy, seconded by Councillor Pinnock. Those in favour of deferral, please show. Unanimous again. Right. Next, we're on to page 89. Just remind you on this item, it's there's no voting on it, but we have got some papers that are of a financial nature. So if you wish at some point to want to talk about it, we will have to have an indication, then go into private session.
Thank you, Chair. So this application is a full application. It has been made by MMR Construction Limited and is for the demolition and conversion of the former Wheelwright Centre Dewsbury into 65 dwelling units. The building was last used as a college and has become vacant since the college's relocation to Dewsbury Town Centre. The proposal would include 92 parking spaces, 12 motorcycle spaces, 66 cycle spaces and dedicated space for refuse. The existing vehicle access is with Birkdale Road and would be used, and the existing access with Halifax Road would be converted into a pedestrian stroke cycle access only. So looking at this as an aerial image gives you a very good context to the site, how it sits within the conservation area with the historic buildings at the front of the site, overlooking green spaces, and the 1980s building to the rear and the 1960s building to the side. It shows how the building has basically evolved and how it sits within the conservation area. So that's that, and then this slide shows a view from Halifax Road and the path leading up to the college. This shows the actual building and its interesting fenestration details and how it's slightly raised on an embankment. And this is the 1960s building that is proposed to be demolished. And as we visited this morning, this is the 1980s building to the rear, which is a little bit different to the 1800s in terms that it has a little bit more glazing. And then just quickly, it's a stereotypical, within the building, stereotypical college retrofitted building with classrooms, corridors, other classrooms and sports halls as well. And this is within the 80s building, as shown with all the glazing. This is the relationship with the nearby houses on Birkdale Road. And the unkept boundary treatments with the urban green space shown. Yeah. A little bit overgrown. And And then, so just going back to the plans showing the conversion, it'd mean that the insertion of mezzanine floors, re-altering some of the internal walls and partitioning certain rooms to accommodate 1 bed, 2 bed, 3 bed and studio apartments. So this image is useful because it's showing how the building would be subdivided into basically 5 stories in parts of it. It shows how basically mezzanine floors would be inserted, the lower grounds would be used, and also how roof lights would be accommodated in the roofscape, which officers, as we discussed this morning, have raised slight concerns. And then again showing the roof lights, conservation roof lights integrated into the roofscape of the building. So, as outlined in section 10 of the committee report, local planning policies LP7, LP24 support the effective reuse of the buildings and brownfield sites in sustainable locations. Officers consider the building is no longer required as an educational or community-related facility, in line with policy LP48 of the local plan. Furthermore, any harm to the conservation area in terms of demolition, alteration and change of use could be considered to be less than substantial with regards to paragraph 196 of the MPPF and would be outweighed against the benefits that such proposal would bring. It should be noted that the Conservation Officer, as I just said, has raised some concerns with regards to the proposed roof lights and the replacement of windows and doors, as well as boundary treatments. Officers do believe that officers do not believe that there would be any adverse impact on existing residential amenity, and although the apartments would have limited private amenity space, it is adjacent to a large urban green space which future residents could use if it is maintained. Although no objections have been raised by highway officers, conditions and planning obligations have been sought in relation to requiring the necessary highway work, further access details, car parking management, as well as securing measures to promote modes of sustainable travel. No objections have been raised from consultees regarding trees, biodiversity, environmental, public health officers, subject again to securing the necessary conditions. However, the lead local flood authority have objected to proposal requiring further details in relation to flow path routing and the proposed drainage strategy regarding surface water runoff, which we discussed this morning. As mentioned in section 10 of the report and supplementary papers, the applicant has provided a viability appraisal based on a scenario where the apartments are for the sale. The appraisal demonstrates that the scheme is a loss-making, even without the inclusion of any affordable housing or any other section 106 contributions. The council has appointed an independent viability consultant to review the appraisal, and they too have provided the same conclusions, but have also highlighted that there were significant viability challenges associated with this particular scheme. The agent has since provided additional case studies of similar conversion developments in the region and has provided a written note that was circulated to members this morning, stating that their client is willing to look at a viability appraisal based on a rental model over a longer period, which they intend to use the building for. Officers therefore ask members to note and discuss the questions raised in the position statement and presentation, and also a private paper has been prepared as the Chair's discussed, and should members wish to discuss its content, I recommend a private session. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm actually supporting this officer's recommendation. Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah. I think it's good. I'm a little bit concerned. There is no affordable unit within the 65 units. Yeah, I understand and the why there because the cost but I like the mixture of those units. 65 room, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom, and some apartment. That's a good mixture. The local community need that. And I think by demolition, the 1960 extension is there. It doesn't look nice and matching with the old building. I think that's good. That's give way for car parking. That's really good. So I'm not sure about this Section 106 contribution, education and sustainable travel initiative open. Are we still, we get there?
I think this is what's open to negotiation. We need to know what viability, the viability appraisal to be redone using the rental model, and then have an honest discussion that we need some of these contributions. What are you willing to, include, if we are to look at providing permission. Some elements with regards to highways and promoting sustainable travel we consider to be still necessary for this scheme. Again, with regards to the affordable housing, although the applicant hasn't applied for vacant building credit, we think that they could apply for vacant building credit, which means that there could be a reduction in the number of affordable housing that they could provide, but they haven't explored that option. So I think these are the matters that kind of need to be discussed with the applicant further.
At least we save the building. It's not a listed building, but still it's a historic building. We save the building by the people have invested money. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I would love to see the reuse of this building because there's nothing worse than having empty buildings around, particularly big ones. I think we could say, or I would certainly say in principle, I would definitely support the redevelopment of this building. I'm not sure we need to have a discussion about the private information. We could leave that to when they produce a planning application. And
it is a live planning application as such.
Sorry, sorry, I'll rephrase that. When we actually get the opportunity to make a decision about it, we're just being asked for opinions at the moment. So I would leave that on one side, whilst recognising that there is an issue about affordability. But I read from other documents that this company specialises in dealing with sites where it is not apparent that it could be made affordable, but that they seem to have done it in quite a few locations and been quite successful. Now, it may be that those sites were easier or whatever, but on the face of it, this site is not particularly difficult. It seems to me. It's merely about the conversion of the building so that it makes an acceptable community for that sort of living. So I'm happy to give a positive opinion about this. It's a building I've known for many years, only in passing, usually, because it's on the main road into Dewsbury. But it would certainly enhance the neighbourhood if it was restored to some sort of beneficial use. And other than turning it back into an educational establishment, housing is probably the right thing to do. Yeah.
You could make it into a soup. Well, I've never been down that road before, but my first thoughts when I got off the bus and walked across there was, what a magnificent building. it hits you as soon as you walk there, and I'm very pleased to say they're going to leave the 19th century building. They're putting the 1961 down because it's got nothing going for it at all, actually. It's just 4 walls and a flat roof. But the actual school itself is a fantastic building, and okay, if it can't be used ever again for education, there's only one thing you can use it for, and that's residential. And I have to say, I would go along with that to save them. And of course, it stands on its own. The land in front of it, it's ringed off. It isn't going to interfere with anybody else. So, you know, that's another good thing on its side. Yeah, it gets my full support. I'm sure they'll bring something back to tell us how they're going to do it, but as long as they leave that main building alone, it's fine by me. Thank you.
And I looked at brochure this morning that we're going round bus, and some of the work they've done in buildings is really top notch. Any more? Mohan?
Yeah, I think highway officer mentioned this morning on the coach that the gate then it need to be widened, yeah?
Yeah, through you, Chair. The access off of Birkdale Road, the access we parked at, there was 3, if you noticed, there was the 3 posts. There was a vehicle access plus the little segregated pedestrian one. The middle one would come out, and that would be fully for vehicle access, with pedestrian and cycle access from the Halifax Road access. Yeah, okay.
Right. Okay with that. I'll try and find out what that piece of land we used at front as well, because I'm almost 100% certain it used to be a cricket field at one time. I don't know, but I know man who does. It does. So we're going to finish off there, and that's 4 hours quicker than the last meeting that we did. Thank you this afternoon.